The world is getting so very dangerous, don't you think? There's Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There's also Russia and China now working together, now sending warships to Japanese islands claimed by China. China this week also claimed it had chased out this US warship, chased it away from islands that it has stolen in the South China Sea. Well, America immediately sent in an aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, yesterday to show that it would not be intimidated. And of course, we now get reports that China also harassed an Australian warship in the area as well. Now, to add to all that tension, China's threats to invade Taiwan. That war could be imminent. And all this, plus China's massive military build-up, was on the mind of Defence Minister Richard Marles when he met the US Defence Secretary in Washington overnight and told him what he told the ABC was keeping him up at night.
But we see that international rules-based order being put under stress in the Indo-Pacific as well, as China seeks to shape the world around it in a way that we've not seen before, and as it engages in the single biggest military build-up that we have seen in the world since the end of the Second World War. And that is a very significant phenomenon.
Now look, maybe this is a bizarre coincidence, a sort of comic overreaction, but New York City's Emergency Management Office this week even put out a video telling citizens how to survive a nuclear attack, something I don't think we've seen in half a century.
So there's been a nuclear attack. Don't ask me how or why, just know that the big one has hit, okay? So what do? You need to get into a building and move away from the windows.
It goes on, and if you're in there, close the doors, blah, blah. So with all this going on, I tell you, it is not a good time for the United States to be led by a president in obvious decline, physically and mentally. Biden yesterday started a 3-day trip to the Middle East to tackle some of these tensions, particularly with Iran, which is another Russia-China ally in a sort of axis of evil, with Iran developing nuclear capability, potentially a bomb. Biden landed first in Israel and immediately looked, as soon as he got off the plane, looked confused about where to go, what to do. Biden then kicked off with a speech about the Holocaust that included an absolute clanger.
To honor 6 million Jewish lives were stolen in the genocide and continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness. To keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust.
Honor it, really. Our next stop in Biden's trip is Saudi Arabia to shore up support. Joining me is General Jack Keane, a retired 4-star general and former Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He's now chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Keane, great to talk to you again. What is Joe Biden trying to achieve with this trip to Israel and Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, this administration, when they came in 2021, they strategically were completely misguided in their approach to the Middle East. As opposed to taking advantage of Trump's maximum sanctions, the Abraham Accords, which is a renewed relationship between the Arabs and the Israelis, and also all the progress that had been made in countering Iran, what did the Biden administration do? They went out and appeased Iran right away. They stopped enforcing some of the Trump sanctions, and they stiffed the Saudi Arabia and the UAE in terms of arms deals that we had made with them. They absolutely damaged seriously the relationship that the previous administration had established. So much of this is about resetting the relationship, renewing the relationship, particularly with the kingdom. And the main issue on the table is, everybody's talking about it's oil, but the main issue on the table is really, how do we counter Iran? And certainly they're going to Israel first before they're going to the Gulf states. and that is a huge issue. And the Arabs are questioning, Andrew, whether the United States is really serious about the relationship with the Middle East, given the fact that Biden was in Obama's administration when that administration did so much to pull out of the Middle East and did so much damage geopolitically as a result of it.
It's just been heartbreaking to watch. I mean, seriously concerning the way the Biden administration thought that going soft on the sanctions on Iran would make them more reasonable. I mean, in fact, Iran seems to have taken strength from that. It's closer into the Russia-China orbit, and its nuclear enrichment program seems to be going ahead. They're not conceding on that one little bit. They're going the opposite, in fact. How serious is the possibility that Iran could very soon have a nuclear weapon?
Well, that's a fascinating question, and it was just answered a few days ago by the Biden administration's special envoy to the Iran negotiations, Robert O'Malley. When asked that question, he said, I quote, "They're a few weeks from being able to put together a nuclear bomb." A few weeks, because they're at 60% enrichment grade uranium, and to get to 90% weapons grade doesn't take much. The other caveat to that, though, is having a bomb is one thing. Weaponizing it so you can deliver it is quite something else. Our intelligence services believe it would still take Iran about a year to be able to take a bomb, miniaturize it, so it could be put on a ballistic missile or some other delivery device. But yes, we are dangerously close here, Andrew. And I think of all the areas dealing in the world where there's not conflict, this is the one that has the most significant potential for conflict.
Yes, that's because Iran is not a rational actor, although these days you might also say exactly the same of Putin's Russia. So there's no telling what it might do in its sort of religious, political extremism. It's just very, very frightening. We actually see, do we not? I mean, we had Russia the other day, the US the other day, warning that Iran was potentially going to send Russia lots of drones for the war in Ukraine. So we see this tightening of the bonds, what I call the sort of axis of evil, Russia, Iran, China. These drone sales, what do you make of them?
Well, these relationships are serious. There's a huge economic relationship between Iran and China, and China is buying a lot of Iran's oil, which has kept them afloat, despite the sanctions that had been imposed on them. This deal with Russia is real and serious. We're talking about a couple of hundred drones, and Iran is very high-tech when it comes to drone technology. They've been at this for years. They have deliverable drones that can go very long distances with a high degree of accuracy and deliver significant missiles to the target. They did this time and time against Saudi Arabia, and they took down 40% of Saudi Arabia's largest oil field a few years ago. So yes, this will help the Russians. It's not going to be decisive in terms of enabling Russia to win the war, but certainly it's going to benefit them quite a bit.
Well, talking about the war in Ukraine, General KEANE, there seems to be, look, maybe I'm, talking out of hope rather than analysis. Maybe you can put me straight. There seems to be a very interesting change there after weeks and weeks of stalemate. Over the last week, 2 weeks, Ukraine has been blowing up perhaps dozens of Russian ammunition dumps, some of them way behind the front lines. Now, it seems that Ukraine has got better long-range weapons, particularly from the US, and Russia's supplies, and the critical ones, these are, ammunition dumps, they're being crippled. How do you read what's going on?
That's very serious, and it's very helpful to the Ukrainians. They're going after their artillery, ammunition dumps, as you referenced them, and some of the other warehouses that are supporting the artillery infrastructure. And these weapons that are going at distance and range that the Ukrainians haven't had before. And they're also precision mobile rocket launchers, so a very high degree of accuracy. And what has actually taken place, we've seen the Russians take terrain in the eastern Donbass region over the last several months. But in doing so, they have so depleted their offensive forces because of the high casualties that they are in an operational pause, even though there's still some level of activity taking place. But the major units are trying to refit and rearm. What I believe is taking place here now is the Ukrainians are preparing and planning for a counteroffensive to begin to take back territory in the south. And we're going to see that unfold over a period of the next several weeks, all through the summer and into the fall before the winter takes place. We don't know how successful the Ukrainians are going to be. They have been successful in the past. A lot will depend on the international community delivering the volume of weapons the Ukrainians need, the right mix, and getting them there as quickly as possible. But that is what I project going forward over the next several weeks.
Well, in terms of European support for the war, I was quite struck on my trip to Holland and to Britain over the last few weeks by the number of Ukrainian flags being flown there. There seems to be quite a level of public support for the Ukrainian army. Now, everywhere we look, though, we see Western countries now, General Keane, getting ready for trouble. There's something in the air. That includes here. The United States has just sent 4 stealth bombers, B-2s, here to Australia, and the commander says they're going to train with our RAAF, and he said, we're sent to Australia to demonstrate and enhance the readiness and lethality of our long-range penetrating strike force. It's obviously aimed at China. What do you think this is all about?
Yeah, this is about training and practicing. The facts are that China is the most rapid growing military in the world today, and they have developed a significant capability to be able to defeat the Taiwan military as their objective, but also to defeat the United States and allies that would come to assist Taiwan in the event of a war. And when we play war games, Andrew, given those scenarios, the facts are that non-stealth fighters and non-stealth bombers cannot penetrate China's air defense systems. They take them down. So the stealth bombers are crucial in this fight. And we have got to upgun ourselves in the region. Your country recognizes it and is doing so. Japan recognizes it and is doing so. Taiwan also obviously is taking that mantle on and accelerating what they are doing. And the United States is beginning to recover from the decline of budgets under the Obama administration and also for the 9/11 wars that has put us at a disadvantage militarily against China's military. And they're rapidly trying to build that capability back up so that we have an effective deterrence. So yes, this is also showing China what this capability is really all about. And it's critical if conflict takes place. Obviously, what we're trying to avoid here is have an effective deterrence to prevent a conflict from taking place.
Well, let's hope that it's all not too late. I mean, 4 B-2s, it's nice, but it's very few. And Australia, of course, also needs to scramble very, very fast. General Jack Keane, thank you so much indeed for your insights.